The room was heavy with greed. Velvet curtains framed the long mahogany table where the family gathered, each face tense, expectant. At the far end sat a woman in a plain black dress, her hands folded quietly in her lap. She was the outcast, the one they had mocked for years, calling her, charity case, gold digger, nobody. As the lawyer opened the final page of the will, a murmur swept through the room. Their smirks widened, until she stood up, tore the papers in half, and revealed the secret that would cost them everything. The grand study of the Bennett estate was silent, except for the faint ticking of the old brass clock above the fireplace. Heavy curtains framed the tall windows, and golden light filtered in, falling across shelves lined with leather-bound books and silver-framed photographs. A long mahogany table dominated the center of the room, surrounded by people dressed in dark suits and expensive perfume, the late Richard Bennett's family. They whispered among themselves, their eyes gleaming with expectation. Somewhere between grief and greed, they waited for the will to confirm what they already believed: everything belonged to them. At the far end of the table sat Claire Donovan, hands folded neatly in her lap. Her black dress was simple, her demeanor calm, though her heart beat hard beneath her ribs. She had served Richard faithfully for 15 years, as his assistant, his confidant, and, in the final months, his caretaker. She knew his habits, his favorite books, the sound of his laugh when no one else was around. She also knew how little his family had cared in the end. And now, surrounded by those same cold faces, she felt the sting of their stares. Charles Bennett, Richard's eldest son, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his smirk unkind. "I didn't realize the staff were invited," he said. His sister Vivian gave a quiet, sharp laugh. "Maybe she's hoping for a little souvenir," she whispered. Claire's fingers tightened slightly, but she said nothing. Dignity was her armor. Mr. Thompson, the family lawyer, cleared his throat and opened the document before him. "This is the last will and testament of Richard James Bennett," he began. The sound of paper rustling filled the room. "To my son Charles, I leave the vineyard estate. To my daughter Vivian, the yacht and accompanying properties." Each line confirmed their sense of entitlement, and smug smiles spread across the table. But as Mr. Thompson reached the final page, his voice slowed. Before the full distribution of assets, Mr. Bennett requested that Ms. Claire Donovan present a sealed document on his behalf. The chatter stopped. Charles sat forward, eyebrows raised. "What's this supposed to mean?" Vivian rolled her eyes. Another one of father's sentimental games. Claire stood slowly, pulling an envelope from her purse. The room seemed to narrow around her as she stepped closer to the table. "Mr. Bennett entrusted this to me personally," she said softly. "He wanted his last wishes read by someone who knew his heart." Charles snorted. "He trusted you. You're just..." She lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes with quiet strength. "Just the woman who stayed by his side when everyone else left." The lawyer nodded for her to proceed. With steady hands, Claire broke the seal. Inside was a letter, written in Richard's familiar handwriting. "If you're reading this," she began, her voice trembling, "then I am gone. But before my family inherits my fortune, they must confront what they've become, and remember what true wealth means." A hush fell, and as Claire lifted her eyes, she knew everything was about to change. Gasps rippled through the room as Claire unfolded the second page, the late Richard Bennett's words flowing like a storm breaking over calm waters. To those gathered, she read, her voice steady though her hands trembled slightly, "You measure wealth by what you own, not by what you give. You mistook power for love, inheritance for worth. In my final days, when I needed family most, only one person remained by my side, not out of obligation, but out of kindness." Every eye turned toward her, and the air grew heavy. Charles's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of unease. Vivian shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the lawyer as though seeking reassurance that this was all some elaborate mistake. But Mr. Thompson said nothing. He knew this letter well. He had witnessed Richard write it with clarity and conviction. Claire continued, each word cutting deeper into the silence. "I built this empire to give my children opportunity, but instead, it became a mirror for their greed. So I will not reward neglect with riches. Therefore, I bequeath controlling interest in Bennett Holdings, the estate, and all major assets, to Ms. Claire Donovan, my most loyal and trusted companion." For a heartbeat, the room froze. Then chaos erupted. Vivian leapt to her feet, knocking her chair over. "This is absurd," she cried, her voice breaking. "He would never give her everything." Charles slammed a fist onto the table. "You manipulated him. You poisoned his mind." Claire took a step back, clutching the letter to her chest, though her eyes stayed firm. "I never asked for this," she said softly. "He made his choice. You'll find his signature on every page, witnessed and notarized." Mr. Thompson nodded solemnly, lifting the official document. "It's all legally binding," he confirmed. Mr. Bennett revised his will 2 weeks before his passing, of sound mind. "Everything is in order." Vivian's face twisted with fury. "You can't just waltz in here and take our inheritance." Claire's gaze softened. "I'm not taking anything from you. He wanted you to learn something far greater than wealth." She held up the letter once more, her voice quiet but unwavering. "He wrote that you would still receive trust allocations, on one condition, that you spend the next year working for the charitable foundation he created. Only then would you inherit." Charles scoffed. "Work for charity? This is humiliation." "It's redemption," Claire replied. "A chance to honor your father's legacy, not just his money." The siblings stood speechless, the weight of truth pressing down harder than any fortune. For the first time, the grandeur of the room felt hollow, all the luxury stripped of meaning. And as Claire folded the letter and placed it gently on the table, she knew Richard's final wish had been fulfilled. The empire he built would no longer be ruled by greed but reborn through compassion, starting with the woman they once dismissed.